Hi, I'm Grant from Blackmagic Design, and this is what's new in Camera Update 1.9.9. Now, this camera update really is mostly about URSA. It's got a lot of new features for the URSA camera, and I'd like to run through some of those features now. I think there's a couple of big things we've added, but one of the big things that I want to talk about first is we've added a new RAW format. It's compressed 3:1, so it's more compression than the current RAW format. You've still got the existing RAW format in there because that's a lossless RAW format, so it's mathematically perfect. This one has a little bit of raw compression, but it means you can get twice the recording length on the cards. So it's really fantastic. I reckon it makes raw recording very similar to using, say, ProRes, because the file sizes are similar size, but the quality is fantastic because it's it's a raw format. It's the original data off the sensor. So it's really great. Now to set that, I'll swing the camera around so I can show you the menus. I'll fold out the big screen here. And if I go into the menus over on the side and go into the record settings, you can see I've got the current 4K RAW that's selected, and that's the current 4K RAW that you've got on the camera now. And all you need to do is select across to the RAW 3:1, and there it is, and you've got it set. And then you're ready to record in RAW, and you get twice the recording length on your cards. So it's fantastic, and you can see the times I've updated on the timelines here to reflect the fact that you're going to be able to get more record time. So that's a really nice thing, and we've been doing tons of RAW recordings because the great thing about RAW is, they're almost independent from frame rates because each frame is a frame in a folder. So, and you just got all the quality off the sensor. So you can set the debayering quality in DaVinci to be anything you like, and you can really get some incredible quality out of it. So it's fantastic, and I think that's a good benefit. The other thing we've done is we've done some user interface changes, and that's kind of important because we're getting so many settings in URSA. I mean, you've got a lot of new settings that we've added now, but it's a very a big camera with a lot of stuff on it. So we found we were running out of space in the menu. So if we go back to the menu and in the monitoring settings, you can see that you can now slide up and down with your finger and get to more of the settings that are on here. So that's kind of really nice. So the other thing that we've got in here, of course, is, well, actually I'll get to that in a minute because one thing I want to talk about, the other big feature we've got is we've increased the number of frames per second, 80 frames a second. So what you now can do is you can run all the way up to 80 frames a second, and it's quite easy to set that. If we go, because there's two sides to this, we've increased the frame rate to 80 frames a second, but we've also made it so that the format that you run the camera in is independent of the frame rate that you're recording. So if I go into the record settings here, you can see I've got the camera set to 24 frames a second. Now, before when you were running URSA, if you wanted to run 60 frames a second recording, you'd have to switch the video rate to, say, Ultra HD 60 frames, and then you'd record in 60 frames, and if you wanted to go back to 24, you'd then have to switch it back to 24. Well, now you can leave the camera set to the frame rate of the project you want to edit. So if, say, you're doing a feature film and you're running 24 frames a second, you can just leave everything set to 24 frames a second because you can set the frame rate now independently. So you can see I've got I've got the 24 frames format here. I'm running Ultra HD, but I've got a separate setting down here now called sensor frame rate. And at the moment that's set to match. So what that means is if you set it to match, then whatever the video format you're recording in, the frame rate you're recording will match. And that's how like video cameras work or other products work. It's actually how URSA essentially used to work. But if I want to now change the frame rate, I can now move it, and I can go from 5 frames a second all the way up, and I can do it in increments of individual frames. I'll go back the other way because I want to go to 80 frames a second. There's match, and there's 80 frames a second. So you can see the 80 frames a second setting there. Now if I come out of the menus, what I can do is if I start recording, and now I'm recording 80 frames a second, and I'm doing it in the RAW 3:1 format. So this is quite exciting because I'm doing sort of 80 frames a second, and I'm just recording that. Now the cool thing is if I stop, what it'll do, because the file is now still 24 frames a second, all the media recorded is 24 frames a second, but what I did is I just shot at 80 frames a second. So when I play that, and I'll switch across to play, and you can see in the monitor here, in fact it took me a moment to get my hand waving in the front there, so it'll probably take a second, but you'll see that now essentially what you've got is slow motion playback in the camera itself, which is kind of nice. You can get an immediate understanding of what your shot's going to look like in the slow motion effect. So when you drop that clip into your edit software, it'll be exactly the same. It'll look the same. And I think you can see my hand moving slowly. It's not a great place to demo here, but we've been having a lot of fun with that feature. The good thing about that, of course, is if you're running, say, 24 frames a second, you could maybe go to 30 frames a second or 32 frames. I mean, you can be quite because you've got individual frame rate adjustments, so you can be quite subtle in how you set that and what look you're after creatively. So it's pretty nice. So that's the slow motion playback. The other thing we've got in here, which I can show you on the menus, is we've added some frame guides. So what we can do is if you're not running basically HD kind of frame size, you can go into the menus here and we'll change that. And if you look down here, there they are there, you can see we've got HDTV as the frame guide setting here. Now we can change that to some different ones. You can see we've got 4x3, so we can do a letterbox. And you'll see there's, oh, it's actually a pillar box. So that's a standard definition, frame size. But let's do something more filmy. So let's run that one. So we've got 2.4 to 1. And what that's done is on the big fold-out monitor here, it's created a sort of a cropping with opacity. So you can essentially run a different framing if you want, and the camera will do that for you. And you can change the opacity settings. So you can run it quite light. You can see I've got a much lighter it's essentially like a viewfinder cropping if you want to think of it like that. But I've backed it off to 25% on the opacity setting here, but you can run it a bit harder if you like. 50% is the default, I believe. So yeah, depending how you like it. If you want it to be, see more outside the frame, you can run it lighter. But if you want to really crop it off, you can even go to 100% where you just see that crop. So that's very useful. But there's also a bunch of different ones in here. We've got 3.9, 2.39, 2.35, 1.85. We've got thirds. Now this is a little different. We've got the thirds, rule of thirds grid. So if you like using that, you can have that on your viewfinder now as well, and that's added in there. And what I'll do is I'll go back to HDTV because I just like to shoot the whole frame myself. So that's pretty cool. And so that's a good thing. And you can see that's why we really need these slidey on-screen display, because without that you can't fit any of the extra features in. The other thing we've got is we can format CFast cards in the camera. So if I go into the display menu, we've got a dashboard in here now, and if I click the format card button, I can click to do either card. So I'll click card number 1. You can see me doing it there. I'll click continue, and I'm going to do HFS Plus. Now we do HFS Plus and exFAT. HFS Plus is the Mac format, which has got journaling, so it's a little bit more robust. exFAT is the sort of Windows format, but of course it's compatible with Mac as well. It doesn't have journaling, so it's not as robust from a file, operating system kind of computer nerdy type of, point of view, but it's very compatible because you can put those cards in Windows or Mac, so that's quite nice. I'll do HFS Plus, and I'll confirm that I really want to do it because you want to make sure you confirm that you don't want to wipe your cards out and suddenly destroy like a day of shooting. So I'll do that, and then it'll now format the card. Now, while it's doing that, it's worth pointing out that you really do want to format your cards in the camera. What we're doing here is we're analysing the card at the moment. We're looking at the structure, the way the card's organised, electronically, and we can now format the card and optimise the format so we can get high performance on the card. When you format the cards in a computer, the computer's really just using it for storage. So it's just formatting it any old way to put data onto it. But when we're using these cards in the cameras, we're doing, we want high performance. We're putting down video data in real time. So we've done a whole lot of optimizations and sort of analysis that looks at the card, works out how it's designed. We also work with the card manufacturers to get information on how the cards work, and we can optimize each card or each brand of card to make sure that we get the best performance. So that's pretty exciting. So that's that. So you can see there's quite a lot of new features in this software release, and we think it's pretty exciting. It's on our website now, so you can download it. The little USB port on the bottom of the camera is there, so you can plug your Mac or Windows computer into that and upload the new software into your camera, and it's almost like having a whole new camera. So we hope you enjoy these new updates and have a lot of fun playing with the slow motion and the higher frame rates, and you can download it now. Okay, thank you.